I still remember the day Dad died. I was only 10, and it felt like someone had ripped my world apart. My name is Rachel, and before that terrible day, my life was full of adventure and joy. Every weekend, Dad and I would head out early in the morning, our bikes gleaming in the sunrise as we raced through the park. "Come on, Rachel, you can do it," he'd shout during my track meets, his voice carrying across the field. We'd spend hours training together, and he never missed a single one of my sports events. Whether it was soccer practice or a simple jog around the neighborhood, Dad was always there, cheering me on with his bright smile and endless enthusiasm. But everything changed after the funeral. Mom, who had always watched our sporty adventures with mild disapproval, suddenly became determined to transform me into someone else entirely. "Rachel, honey, put those running shoes away," she'd say, her voice tight with disappointment. "I bought you some lovely new ballet flats. Wouldn't you rather try those?" The changes came gradually at first, then like an avalanche. Gone were the weekend sports activities, replaced by shopping trips for dresses and makeup. Mom started buying me beauty magazines instead of sports equipment, and every birthday brought another pile of cosmetics I never wanted to use. "Sit still, Rachel," she'd command, trying to apply mascara to my fidgeting face. Every young lady needs to learn these things. But I didn't want to be a young lady. I wanted to run, to feel the wind in my hair, to race against my own best times like I used to do with Dad. The mirrors in our house became my enemies, reflecting back an image of what Mom wanted me to be, not who I was. It was clear that I wasn't the daughter she wanted. Every time I chose sneakers over heels or picked up a basketball instead of a makeup brush, I could see it in her face, that mix of frustration and disappointment that made me feel like I was somehow broken. 3 years passed this way, with Mom and me locked in a silent battle over who I should be. Then she met him, a widower, Richard, with a 9-year-old daughter, Anna. At first, I was hopeful that having someone new in the house might make things better. Maybe Mom would be happier and stop trying to change me so much. But Anna turned out to be a nightmare. She was everything I wasn't, perfectly dressed in frilly outfits, obsessed with makeup, and absolutely vicious when the adults weren't looking. She'd wait until Mom and her dad were distracted, then she'd do something nasty, hide my homework, mess up my room, or make snide comments about my boyish clothes. "She's just expressing herself," they'd say, while I sat there, knowing the truth. This wasn't independence or spirit, it was pure malice, carefully calculated to make my life miserable. And the worst part was, because she was younger than me, I couldn't do anything about it without looking like the bad guy. The wedding was small and quick, held in our backyard on a sunny Saturday afternoon. I stood there in an uncomfortable bridesmaid dress, watching my mom beam at her new husband and his daughter. They moved in the very next day, bringing boxes full of pink, frilly things that seemed to take over our home like an invasion. "Mom," Anna would call out in her sugary sweet voice, the word hitting me like a slap each time. "Can you help me with my hair?" And Mom would rush over, practically glowing with joy, while I stood in the doorway, invisible. It was like watching some twisted play where everyone had their perfect roles except me. Anna was everything Mom had always wanted. She'd spend hours trying on dresses, experimenting with makeup, and asking Mom for fashion advice. She never got dirty, never wanted to play sports, never did anything that wasn't ladylike. But behind closed doors, Anna was different. She'd wait until we were alone, then show her true colors. One morning, I woke up late for school because she'd snuck into my room and turned off my alarm clock. "Oh, did you oversleep?" she asked innocently at breakfast, while Mom frowned at me for being irresponsible. It got worse from there. She'd accidentally spill nail polish on my favorite sports jerseys, or forget she was supposed to share the bathroom. I'd end up washing my face in the kitchen sink, trying to get ready for school while she took hour-long showers. "Mom," I tried explaining one day after finding my homework soaked with water. "She's doing this on purpose." Mom just sighed and exchanged looks with my stepfather. "Girls, you're sisters now. You need to work these things out yourselves." "That's right," Richard agreed, patting his daughter's head. "You two just need to learn to get along." But how could we get along when she was deliberately making my life hell? She'd hide my things, mess up my room, and then play innocent when I got angry. And the worst part was, Mom believed her act completely. That's when I started spending more time at Grandma's house. She lived just a few blocks away, and her home became my sanctuary. There, I didn't have to pretend or compete for attention. I could just be myself. "Are you sure everything's okay at home, Rachel?" Grandma would ask, her wise eyes seeing more than I wanted to share. "Yeah, I'm fine," I'd say, not wanting to burden her with the truth. "I just like spending time with you." She'd smile and squeeze my hand, and somehow that simple gesture meant more than all of Mom's forced attempts at bonding. At Grandma's house, there were no beauty magazines, no constant criticism of my clothes or behavior, no stepsister's mind games. Just acceptance and love, plain and simple. The years dragged by until finally, I made it through high school. I spent months researching colleges, staying up late to perfect my applications and essays. I applied to several schools, hoping at least one would accept me. When the acceptance letters started coming in, I could barely contain my excitement. 3 colleges wanted me, but one stood out from the rest. It offered a partial scholarship and was several states away. Perfect. I rehearsed how I'd tell Mom and my stepfather about it. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd finally be proud of me. I chose breakfast time, when everyone was usually in a good mood. "I got accepted to 3 colleges," I announced, trying to keep my voice steady. "One of them is offering me a partial scholarship." Mom looked up from her coffee, her expression unreadable. Anna, now 14 and even more insufferable than before, paused mid-bite of her toast. "The tuition won't be too expensive with the scholarship," I continued, pulling out the acceptance letter. "And the school has a great program." "Rachel," Mom cut me off, exchanging a look with my stepfather. "You're an adult now. You need to figure out how to handle your own problems." I felt like I'd been slapped. But I thought. "We don't have money for your college right now," she said, pursing her lips. "We're saving up for your sister's education." Anna's face lit up with smug satisfaction. When Mom wasn't looking, she stuck her tongue out at me, like the mature 14-year-old she was. "But that's years away," I protested. "And with the scholarship?" I said no, Rachel. Mom's tone was final. She turned to Anna, completely dismissing me. "Sweetie, don't forget you have dance practice today." "I won't, Mom," she replied sweetly, emphasizing the word mom while smirking at me. I couldn't take it anymore. I pushed back my chair and left the table, my breakfast barely touched. Nobody called after me. Nobody came to check if I was okay. I could hear Mom and my stepsister chatting and laughing as if I hadn't even been there. In my room, I let the tears fall. All those years of hard work, of maintaining good grades while dealing with my stepsister's torment, and this was what I got. They were saving for her college, but couldn't spare anything for mine? The next morning, I went straight to Grandma's house. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked, leading me to her cozy kitchen. The familiar smell of coffee and fresh bread wrapped around me like a comfort blanket. I told her everything, about the acceptance letters, the scholarship, and Mom's rejection. With each word, I could see Grandma's expression growing darker. Grandma's hands clenched around her coffee mug. "That's absolutely ridiculous. Sarah's forgotten herself completely." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Don't you worry about college, Rachel. I'll pay for it." "Grandma, no, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking, I'm offering," she said firmly. "I've been saving money my whole life, and what better use for it than my granddaughter's education? You're going to that college, and you're going to make your father proud." When I got home that evening, Mom was waiting in the living room. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw her face. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, and her eyes were blazing with anger. "So, you went running to your grandmother to complain about me," she spat out, before I could even close the front door. She called me today, yelling about how I'm neglecting you and refusing to pay for your college. How dare you make me look bad in front of my own mother? I didn't make you look bad, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You did that all by yourself when you chose your stepdaughter over me. Ungrateful, she shouted, her face reddening. After everything I've done for you. And now you're trying to cause problems between me and my mother? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I just told her the truth about what happened at breakfast. The truth? Mom laughed bitterly. The truth is that you're a spoiled, entitled brat who can't accept that she's not the center of attention anymore. Go to your room. I don't want to see your face until morning. I ran upstairs and slammed my door, my hands trembling as I turned the lock. Through the walls, I could hear my stepsister's muffled giggling from her room. She'd probably heard everything and was loving every second of it. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I packed my bags, clothes, important documents, the few photographs I had of Dad, and the medals we'd won together. By dawn, I had everything I needed. I waited until I heard Mom leave for her morning yoga class before slipping out of the house. The morning air felt fresh and clean, like a new beginning. I didn't look back as I walked to Grandma's house. She opened the door before I could even knock, as if she'd been expecting me. That evening, after settling into Grandma's spare room, I sent Mom a message. I'm staying at Grandma's until college starts. Don't worry about me. The message showed as read almost immediately, but no reply came. Not that day, not the next, not ever. The silence spoke volumes about where I stood in her life now. The weeks before college passed quickly at Grandma's house. I found a job at the Sweet Bean Cafe down the street, working as many shifts as they'd give me. Every dollar I earned went straight into my savings account. Finally, the day came to leave for college. The train station was quiet that early in the morning. Call me when you get there, Grandma said, hugging me tight. And remember, you can always come home, my home is your home now. I scanned the station one last time, part of me still hoping to see Mom appear at the last minute. But the only family I had there was Grandma, waving until the train pulled out of sight. College turned out to be everything I'd hoped for and more. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely, without walking on eggshells or watching my back. I made real friends, people who liked me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. I got a job at the campus library, shelving books and helping students find research materials. The quiet atmosphere and steady work helped me feel grounded, and the paycheck meant I didn't have to ask Grandma for money. Still, every month she'd send a few $100s, and no matter how many times I tried to refuse, she insisted. Mom became a ghost in my life, reduced to occasional text messages and obligatory holiday greetings. Once, about halfway through my freshman year, she sent me a message, "How are you?" I stared at those 3 words for a long time before responding with a simple, "Fine, studying hard." That was it, our longest conversation in months. After that, we settled into a routine of sorts. Merry Christmas and Happy Birthday became our only exchanges, each message feeling more hollow than the last. Sometimes I'd see photos on social media of Mom and my stepsister at shopping malls or fancy restaurants, both of them smiling like they had everything they wanted in the world. Maybe they did. As graduation approached, and I sent out 2 graduation invitations, one to Grandma, and one to Mom. The second one felt like throwing a message in a bottle into the ocean. I knew it would probably never get a response, but something made me send it anyway. When Grandma called, I could tell something was wrong by the way her voice wavered. "Rachel, sweetheart," she said, "I'm not feeling well enough to travel. The doctor says I need to rest." My heart sank. After 4 years of hard work, the one person I wanted there wouldn't be able to come. I tried to hide my disappointment, but Grandma knew. "I'm so sorry, darling. I wanted so much to be there." That night, I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning as I tried to figure out a solution. Then it hit me, if Grandma couldn't come to graduation, maybe graduation could come to her. The next morning, I cornered my classmate Tyler, who was always tinkering with tech gadgets. Hey, you still have that mini camera that can do live streaming? I explained my plan, and his face lit up. That's brilliant. We can attach it to your graduation robe, and your grandmother can watch everything in real time on her phone. When I called Grandma to tell her my plan, I could hear the smile in her voice. You mean I'll be able to see everything? Just like I'm there? Everything, I promised. You'll hear the speeches, see me walk across the stage, everything. She started crying, happy tears this time. You're so clever, just like your father. He would be so proud of you, Rachel. Later that day, I gathered my friends to warn them about the live stream. Just, watch your language, okay? My grandmother's going to be listening. They laughed kindly. Don't worry, my roommate Sarah assured me. We'll be on our best behavior. Promise. Standing in front of the mirror that night, I practiced my walk across the stage, imagining Grandma watching from her bed, probably with tissues ready. It wasn't the graduation ceremony I'd imagined when I first started college, but somehow it felt perfect. The graduation ceremony was everything I'd imagined. The sun was shining, the campus looked beautiful, and I could practically feel Grandma's presence through the tiny camera pinned to my robe. Everything was perfect, until I spotted her. Mom was sitting in the middle section, wearing a navy blue dress I'd never seen before. For a moment, I thought I was seeing things. But no, it was definitely her. My hand started shaking as I adjusted my cap, thankful that Grandma couldn't see my face through the camera. I managed to keep my composure through the ceremony, even as I walked across the stage to receive my diploma. The whole time, I could feel Mom's eyes on me. What was she doing here? She hadn't responded to the invitation, hadn't spoken to me in months except for the usual holiday messages. After the ceremony, while my friends were taking pictures and hugging their families, she appeared at my elbow. Rachel, she said, touching my arm. Can we talk privately? My throat tightened, but I nodded. We moved away from the crowd, to a quiet spot under a large oak tree. For a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Maybe she'd finally realized what she'd done. Maybe she was here to apologize. I'm proud of you, she said, and for one brief, shining moment, I felt like a little girl again, desperate for her approval. Then she continued, and now that you're graduated and will be working, we need to talk about your sister's college fund. The world seemed to tilt sideways. What? Anna just graduated high school, Mom said, as if we were discussing the weather. Her grades weren't as good as yours, so she won't get any scholarships. She'll need to pay full tuition. I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. And what does that have to do with me? For years ago, you told me you were saving money for her college. That's why you couldn't help me, remember? Mom's face hardened. We had other expenses come up. Things happen, Rachel. You need to stop living in the past and help your family. Help my family? I could feel anger rising in my chest. The same family that threw me out? The same sister who made my life hell for years? Don't be dramatic, Mom snapped. You chose to leave. I'm not paying for her college, I said firmly. Not after everything she did to me. Mom's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, her fingers digging in painfully. Listen to me, you selfish, arrogant girl, she hissed, her face inches from mine. You are obligated to help your sister. If you refuse, don't even think about coming back to the house after graduation. In fact, I'll disown you completely. Is that what you want? That house belongs to Grandma, I reminded her, trying to keep my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Mom's laugh was cold and cruel, a sound I'd never heard from her before. Oh, sweetie, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Mom's not doing well. She's been sick for a while now. The gleam in her eyes made my stomach turn. Honestly, she's lingered longer than anyone expected. But when she does pass, and it won't be long now, everything goes to me. I'm her only daughter, after all. The casual way she spoke about Grandma's death, the barely concealed hope in her voice, made me feel physically ill. This wasn't my mother, or maybe it was, and I was just finally seeing her clearly. "I won't help you," I said, pulling my arm free from her grip. "Not now, not ever." I practically ran back to my dorm room, my graduation robe flapping behind me. As soon as I closed the door, my phone rang. It was Grandma. Rachel, her voice was sharp and clear, no trace of the illness Mom had described. I heard everything. My hand flew to the camera still pinned to my robe. In all the drama, I'd completely forgotten about the livestream. Grandma had witnessed the whole ugly scene. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," I stammered, sinking onto my bed. "I didn't mean for you to." "Listen to me," Grandma cut me off. "I need you to pack your things and come home right away." "Can you do that?" The drive to Grandma's house took several hours. The whole time, my mind kept replaying Mom's words, the way she'd talked about Grandma dying. How could she be so cold about her own mother? When I arrived, Grandma was sitting in her favorite armchair, looking frail and sickly. She gave me a tight hug, then sat me down at the kitchen table. "I had a very interesting conversation with your mother this morning," she said, pouring us both cups of tea. "After I heard what she said at your graduation, I called and told her to move out of my house." I nearly choked on my tea. "You what?" Grandma's eyes twinkled with a mixture of mischief and steel. She seemed quite shocked. Apparently, she's been operating under the delusion that my house is somehow her house. The next morning, Grandma and I drove to Grandma's house where my mother had been living. They were all there when we arrived: Mom, Richard, and Anna, who had grown taller but still wore the same smug expression I remembered. Mom barely glanced at me when we entered, not even bothering with a greeting. "Mother," she said, addressing Grandma while pointedly ignoring me. "This is all a misunderstanding. Rachel's been lying to you. I never said I would kick her out or anything like that." Grandma sat down in the living room armchair, her old favorite spot, and fixed Mom with a steady gaze. "I heard everything myself, Sarah." The camera on Rachel's graduation robe captured it all. Every threat, every cruel word, including your charming comments about hoping for my death. The color drained from Mom's face, but she quickly recovered. Her lips curved into that fake smile I knew so well. "Oh, Mom, you must have misunderstood. We can talk about this later, when everyone's calmer." "No, Sarah. There won't be a later." Grandma's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Tomorrow morning, I'm taking Rachel to the notary. I'm transferring ownership of this house to her, and while we're there, I'm updating my will to ensure all my savings go to her as well." The silence that followed was deafening. Anna's mouth hung open in shock. My stepfather seemed to shrink into himself. "And Mom," Mom exploded. "You manipulative little bitch," she screamed at me, all pretense of civility gone. "This was your plan all along, wasn't it? Turning my own mother against me? Playing the victim until you got everything you wanted?" She advanced toward me, but Grandma stepped between us. "Sarah, that's enough. You're both crazy," Mom shouted. "My own mother and daughter, conspiring against me. And you," she pointed a shaking finger at Grandma, "you're nothing but a senile old woman who's been fooled by this ungrateful, conniving." "1 hour," Grandma said quietly, but with such authority that Mom stopped mid-rant. "You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave. All of you." What followed was a blur of activity. Mom, Richard, and Anna rushed around the house, throwing things into boxes and suitcases. They made as much noise as possible, slamming doors and drawers, but Grandma and I sat quietly in the living room, watching the clock. Exactly 58 minutes later, they were gone. The house felt empty and clean, like the air after a storm. That evening, as Grandma and I sat in the kitchen making plans, I had an idea. "Grandma, why don't you move in here with me? We could rent out your house, and I could take care of you." She looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, that's not a bad idea. This house is bigger, after all, and it would be nice to have company." So that's what we did. Grandma's house was rented to a lovely young family, providing her with a steady income on top of her savings. We turned the living room into a cozy shared space where we spend our evenings watching old movies and talking about Dad. Sometimes I catch glimpses of Mom and my former stepsister around town. They always look away quickly, hurrying in the opposite direction. I've heard through mutual acquaintances that they moved into a small apartment across town, and my stepsister ended up going to community college instead of the expensive university she'd planned on. But honestly, I barely think about them anymore. My life is full of other things now: my job, my friends, and most importantly, my grandmother, who showed me what unconditional love really means. We've created our own little family, just the two of us, and it's more than enough. Every morning, I wake up to the smell of Grandma's coffee and the sound of her humming in the kitchen. Every evening, we sit together in the garden she's teaching me to tend. And every day, I'm thankful for the twist of fate that led me to wear that camera at graduation.
I'm marrying my 23-year-old lover. Actually, we're not legally married, so there's no division of property. This shocking statement came from my husband, who I had been with for 3 years. In disbelief, I was confronted with the marriage registration form he claimed to have submitted to the city hall. There's no way I'd actually marry someone like you. You can't even manage to be a decent housekeeper, so stop dreaming. Laughing mockingly, he tore up the marriage form, and the pieces scattered all over the floor. The 3 years of patience I had endured seemed to collapse with a crash. Working in banking, he was a promising man on a path to a bright future. To him, laughing in his triumph, I must have seemed like a joke. Despite this, I responded clearly. "Then you're fired." What? He still hadn't realized it. The real joke here wasn't me, it was him. My name is Sandra Ford. Since graduating high school, I had been working as a cashier at a local supermarket. I wasn't wealthy, but I lived a happy life, suited to living alone and fulfilling my hobby as a writer. It was a carefree daily life for me, but my friend Amy, who worked at a bank, always seemed worried about me. "Aren't you going to find someone nice soon, Sandra? It's going to be tough if you stay alone forever." I don't have any romantic prospects, and I enjoy writing novels more anyway. "Don't say that. I have someone I want you to meet. He's a senior colleague at my workplace. How about it?" Amy had been happily married for 2 years. If she recommended him so highly, married life must be delightful. Thus, I agreed to meet this man. His name was David, and I was struck by his handsomeness at first glance. He was well dressed in a suit, and his tidy hair and clean aura completely matched my taste. It seemed David also had a good impression of me. And after meeting several times, we officially started dating. Within less than a year, we were married. I couldn't have imagined such a whirlwind marriage back then. But as a newlywed, I was filled with happiness. I was blissfully unaware of the ending this marriage would come to meet. The sense of discomfort started a year into our marriage. David, an elite bank employee with a promising future, rarely took breaks. He hardly ever came home on time. And if there were business matters on weekends, he had to attend. That left all the housework to me, something I was willing to do to support him. However, gradually, David stopped showing appreciation for it. One day, when I was slightly ill and felt dizzy while folding laundry, I took some medicine and went to bed. Waking up to the sound of David returning, I greeted him with a headache. "Welcome home. I'm feeling a bit under the weather, and dinner isn't ready yet. I'll make it now, just wait a bit." "Seriously? After I've been working hard until late. It must be nice to be able to laze around using your health as an excuse. I'll eat out, you can have deli foods or something." Not a single word of concern for my health, he quickly left the house. I understood he was tired, but a little worry for me would have been nice. My frustration began to gnaw at me. But that wasn't all. Once, hoping for a day out together, I arranged my day off to match his and suggested shopping. However, David didn't seem to enjoy it at all. He was distracted when I spoke to him and kept checking his watch. Is something wrong? Do you have some other commitment? No, it's just tough not being able to relax at home on my day off. You can take days off whenever you like. So even if you're tired today, you can just rest again. Maybe compared to your job, but isn't there a better way to say that? That's kind of harsh. Sorry. In your mind, a banker like me and a part-timer like you are on the same level of work. I must have spoken to the wrong person. When he had a bad day at work, he would take his stress out on me like this. He never did this while we were dating. While it might have cleared his mind, it only increased my stress. Don't say things like that. Let's watch a movie. There's a popular one I've heard is good. I'm not interested in that kind of stuff. Go watch it alone if you want. I'll rest at a cafe nearby. Movies were my hobby, but David had never once accompanied me since our marriage. Still, I tried to improve our relationship. I performed all the housework perfectly and expanded my cooking repertoire to suit his tastes, all in hopes of making him happy. But David never thanked me. On the contrary, if I ever seemed to be self-satisfied, he would click his tongue in annoyance. That's what wives are supposed to do, right? What's with that self-righteous look on your face? It's making me sick. Being looked at with such disgust, I was deeply hurt. Since then, my laughter in his presence drastically reduced. Just being together became suffocating, and I started to regret our marriage. By the end of our second year of marriage, I had lost all affection for him and was merely enduring. Still, I tried to hold on to hope for our life together. If it didn't work with just the two of us, maybe adding a third person would help. Thinking a cold husband might become a kind father. I broached the subject of wanting children with David. However, his response was merciless. Looking at you doesn't raise my spirits at all. Don't talk about such disgusting things. Just thinking about it makes me feel sick. I took care of my appearance, using makeup and dressing well. Not to boast, but I believe I look above average. Yet David staunchly refused to spend time with me. From then on, as if he hated even seeing my face, he often made excuses to stay out late, eventually returning home reeking of women's perfume. That was too much for me, and when I confronted him, it was a waste of time. On the contrary, it seemed as if I had touched a raw nerve, and he erupted in anger. Shut up. What I do with the money I earn is my business. It's fine if you want to have fun. But coming home at this hour smelling like perfume is just unreasonable. Who's the unreasonable one here, you incompetent fool? Fueled by alcohol, David retorted aggressively. All you do is household chores that anyone could handle. You couldn't survive without someone like me to support you. So don't get all high and mighty. That's cruel. I work too, you know. I had continued my part-time job even after marriage, and earned a little extra from my writing hobby. It might not be much compared to David, but it was enough to live on my own. Despite this, David started defending the girls at the nightclubs rather than his own wife. Unlike you, Hannah is a good girl. She's cute and works hard. She's much more respectable and earns more than a jobless person like you. The look of adoration on his face was clear. he was obviously infatuated. It was disgusting to see my own husband making such a face for another woman. Since then, just seeing David's face made me feel sick. And I no longer wanted children with him. Even when he didn't come home, I didn't feel lonely. The only time that increased was the time I spent alone in front of the computer. It feels like I'm living the same life as when I was single. Wanting someone to listen to these problems, I decided to talk to Amy, who had introduced me to David. She listened sympathetically and almost started crying while talking to me. So David was like that. He seemed so serious and honest at the bank. What a disappointment. I'm really sorry, it was me who introduced him. No, it was my decision to get married. But thinking that it might stay like this forever is just too hard. It was the first time I mentioned considering divorce. I couldn't look her in the eye, but I felt like I couldn't keep going much longer. Sensing this, Amy encouraged me with kind words. We're still young, maybe it's better to split up? You're not jobless, right? Yeah, I think it might be time for me to call it. If things don't improve in a year, I'll make a decision. That's a good idea. Tell me when that time comes. I'll do whatever I can to help. True friends are indeed valuable. Talking to Amy helped me sort out my feelings. One more year. If things didn't improve by then, I would leave. I resolved myself once again. If I end up living alone, I'll need to increase my part-time hours. And maybe this is the only time I can immerse myself in writing. Maybe this experience would even help me write something interesting. With plenty of time alone, I continued to face the computer screen, escaping from the harsh reality. And so the third year came. David's behavior didn't improve but got even worse. After mentioning Hannah, he stopped using drinking parties as an excuse. I was drinking at Hannah's place. She's totally fallen for me. A good woman knows a good man when she sees one. Was he not aware that he was admitting to cheating? I ignored him but recorded his voice. I also secretly followed him when he went out on the weekends and filmed him meeting up with a woman. He, now over 30 with increasing wrinkles, was unfit for the young and cute girl he walked arm in arm with. That girl was Hannah. I had confirmed she worked at the place listed on a business card found in David's suit. And my preparations for leaving were all set. Hey, how long are we going to keep living like this? A year after talking to Amy, I brought it up to David. I'm at my limit. I've been patient, hoping your behavior would improve. But I can't take it anymore. Can we get a divorce? We were having dinner together for a change when I asked. And David's eyes widened in shock. Divorce. You want a divorce from me? Yes. You know why, don't you? I thought he would accept smoothly, so his reaction surprised me. Perhaps he was reluctant to lose someone who did the housework. I braced myself for a fight, but I was completely wrong. You're mistaken if you think getting divorced will get you money and freedom. David scoffed at me. I was taken aback by his reaction. What's so funny? After being treated like a housekeeper and cheated on, it's only natural. I haven't cheated, you see. David smirked and went to his room, returning with a piece of paper that made my face turn pale. Is that our marriage certificate? Indeed, it was our marriage registration form, which was supposed to have been submitted to the city hall long ago. David had said he would handle it before he went to work, but why was it here? There's no way I'd actually register our marriage. You're not even a good housekeeper, so stop dreaming. David mercilessly tore it up and threw it around the room. We weren't actually registered? That's right. So you're not a wife, but just a freeloader. There's no way cheating could apply in our situation. I was stunned, and David looked pleased with himself. Maybe it's time for you to leave this house. Thanks for your time as a housekeeper. What do you mean by that? I'm marrying my 23-year-old lover. Actually, we're not legally married, so there's no division of property. Furious at David's triumphant look, I couldn't contain my anger. Who would have thought all my patience was just a farce? Reality is stranger than fiction. The efforts of these tough 3 years crumbled with a crash. To him, I must have seemed utterly ridiculous. I finally reached my breaking point as he laughed. Then you're fired. What? He might have thought it was just a sore loser's complaint as he sneered at me. But he still hadn't realized that he was the one who was about to face hell. A jobless person like me firing you? What are you even talking about? Don't make me laugh. David looked down on me with a half smile. But I wasn't joking. Knowing it was useless to talk anymore, I called Amy right then. Hello, Amy? Sorry for calling out of the blue. I've decided to break up. Can you help me with the aftermath? Got it. I'll handle things well here, so take care. Although it was a short conversation, Amy seemed to understand. David, who overheard, furrowed his brows and tilted his head. Amy, that junior of mine? Whatever you ask her, she can't do anything. He still appeared confident. I play the ideal person at work. No one will believe I'm the bad guy if you and Amy work together. In fact, doing that might endanger Amy's position. David has been a top employee since we met. Amy was deceived by that as well and introduced him to me. His reputation within the company may indeed be admirable. However, that was of no concern to me. Don't worry, Amy's words will definitely get through. Especially to that bank branch manager. To the branch manager. As I said this, David's expression tensed up slightly. Why are you so sure that only the branch manager believes Amy's stories? Could it be Amy is the branch manager's mistress? The branch manager is almost 60 years old. The idea of a boss having a mistress in the company seemed to disgust David. Although what he was doing was hardly any different. Quite the convenient narrative for him. Don't get it twisted. The only scumbag who keeps a mistress and fools around is you, David. It's a privilege of attractive men. Not bad, right? But yeah, the branch manager and Amy. That's not likely since there's almost a parent-child age gap. David laughed at his own words. However, he suddenly seemed to realize something. Frozen with a smile, he then looked at me. Wait a minute, Amy and the branch manager. Yes, those two are father and daughter. David seemed truly unaware as he struggled to process my words. In fact, Amy works at the bank where her father is the branch manager. Amy is already married, so her last name has changed. Plus, she wanted to succeed on her own merit at work. So she never let anyone know she was his daughter. No way. I've met with the branch manager privately a few times. But he never mentioned having a daughter. He's just keeping his promise to Amy. She means that much to him. That's why if she speaks up, your position might be in jeopardy. David seemed unconvinced, yet he appeared alarmed. He banged on the table to intimidate. Tell Amy to stop snitching right now. It's too late to panic now. You're going to marry your mistress eventually, right? Sooner or later, everyone at work will find out anyway. Don't joke with me. If an elite like me leaves, it will impact the bank's performance. I'm not some replaceable nobody like you. Frustrated, David scratched his head and then made a suggestion, breathing heavily. Fine. I'll pay you then. Give Amy money to stop her. I don't need your money. Don't lie, you're about to lose your house and everything. It must be hard to live off me as a parasite, right? Despite the situation, David still looked down on me and pulled out about $500 from his wallet. He flaunted it in front of me. I was thinking of throwing you out penniless. But I'll be generous and give you this much. Now, make Amy shut up. You always care about yourself, don't you? I sighed in exasperation. Reluctantly, I took out my smartphone, and David looked relieved. However, his expression changed instantly when he saw the screen. You haven't been on the phone this whole time, have you? I never said I hung up, did I? As I smiled in response, Amy, furious on the other end of the phone, raised her voice. I trusted you, and I'm so disappointed. I won't forgive you for making my friend sad. Wait, hold on. This is a misunderstanding. Outsiders shouldn't interfere in a couple's fight. This has gone beyond just a fight. I've recorded everything you said, and I'll let my father hear it. Be prepared. The call finally ended there. Left behind was just a pitiful man, his anger with nowhere to go. What the hell? Suddenly the branch manager's daughter, I don't understand. He repeatedly slammed the table, making a tremendous noise. I felt a chill not knowing when his fists might turn towards me. Why would you go to such lengths for someone like you? To the bank, losing me would be a bigger loss than your sadness. Really? Maybe your value is actually less than mine. I said this and took out my own bank book. David showed no interest in it. Didn't I manage that account since we started dating? What's it to you now? That's the one for my part-time job, right? This is a different account. What? Why would someone like you have two accounts? Confused, he snatched the bank book from me and scrutinized it, repeatedly checking the figures. Wait a minute, how much is in here? About $500,000? I'm not sure of the total since some of it is invested. David didn't seem to hear me. In reality, I had been making a decent income from my writing hobby. Initially, it was about as much as my part-time job, not enough to feel secure. Concerned about my future, I had Amy handle my investments since I lived at home. I used the part-time income for daily expenses and saved all my writing earnings, which accumulated to quite a sum. But back then, $500,000 was unimaginable. How could it have grown so much? That was thanks to David. Since he started spending less time at home and more with his mistress in recent years, I dedicated all my newfound alone time to writing. As a result, my update frequency and reader base grew significantly. Recently, a popular site even requested a one-shot from me. My online novels' advertising revenue skyrocketed with the increased readership, substantially boosting my income compared to my single days. If I were to close this account now, the bank would not be unscathed. Why keep working part-time if you're earning so much? You planned to deceive me from the start. I thought it was important to work outside too. If you just stay home, you won't learn common sense. I didn't want to become unreasonable like you. I'm unreasonable. I'm far above the average men out there. Being skilled at work means nothing if your personality is twisted. With that, I stood up and walked past a stunned David. I'm leaving this house as I intended. I'll be contacting you through my lawyer to demand compensation. I have the recording from earlier and all the evidence prepared. Wait, please. Can we maybe not go through with the divorce? It pains me to think of you alone. He must have been dazzled by money. Where did all his anger go? He tried to appease me with a gentle tone, thinking I would reconsider. But it only made me lose respect for him. There's nothing to divorce over, we were never married in the first place. We're strangers, so don't meddle in my affairs. Please reconsider. The bank already thinks poorly of me. And if they see a loss because of me, I'll be off the promotion track. Even now, all he cares about is himself. His self-centered remarks made me laugh outright. If you need consolation so badly, why don't you go to Hannah? You've been doing that all along, haven't you? At my words, David was at a loss for words and stuttered. I stormed out of the room and started walking aimlessly. Seeing his face contorted in the way I had so often felt oppressed brought me profound relief. I planned to collect my belongings later when David was at work. That day, I indulged in a nice meal and stayed at a hotel near a large station. I had always wanted to try. The fluffy bed made me sleepy the moment I sat down. I relished the time of doing nothing, savoring my newfound freedom. I need to consult a lawyer and also focus on my upcoming writing deadlines. At that moment, I thought I was free from David and that it was all over. But that was naive of me. I had yet to learn just how vile a man David was. That became clear about a week after I left the house. Amy informed me that due to her father's discovery of David's misdeeds, his dismissal was decided. However, that didn't mean he could just stop coming to work the next day. Since David was a capable employee, he needed to hand over his clients, requiring his attendance for a few more days. Other employees, aware of why he was fired, gave him cold stares during the handover process. I thought that served as a kind of punishment, but there was another problem. Sandra, have you withdrawn any money from your writing account recently? No. What's up all of a sudden? The amount doesn't match what we checked during the last investment review. You don't usually use this account, so I was wondering, she said. She seemed to think that I might have withdrawn some money for living in a hotel. However, as I mentioned earlier, I don't recall using any money from that account. I have no idea, but if someone likely did it, they would remember. Could David have done something? I immediately headed to the bank where David worked. Approaching the counter, David happened to call my number. Why are you here? Did you come to cool off? He didn't seem repentant. Not wanting to waste time on idle chatter, I cut to the chase. I'd like to see the transaction history of my writing account. Could you check it for me? His face visibly paled. Sweat beaded on his wrinkled forehead. You don't need to check that now. There are other customers, let's do this later. I need it now. Or is there a reason you can't show it? When I spoke in a low voice, David reluctantly took the bank book and disappeared to the back. He returned with the transaction history, which I immediately checked. Sure enough, there was a record of $50,000 being withdrawn a few days ago. That was no small amount. This isn't my transaction. It's unauthorized use, so I'll have to report this to the police. Wait, please. There's no need to make a big deal out of it. As I muttered under my breath, David suddenly shouted out. Indeed, I had suspected David, but I was taken aback by how quickly he slipped up. Did you do it, then? You knew and came here? I've been tricked by you again. This is the worst. He must have thought I had investigated everything beforehand. The foolish thief had confessed all on his own. I have no intention of forgiving you, but tell me why you did this. Look, I didn't steal this for personal gain. I just borrowed it. I don't want your money. Then why take it? I waited for him to explain further. Then, David started saying something odd again. You said you were going to demand compensation from me, right? But I'm about to lose my job and have no income. I have a future to think about with Hannah, so I can't waste money. That's why I thought I'd use your money to pay you off. What are you saying? You stole money to pretend you paid? That's right. I memorized your account number when I saw it last week. I can check the PIN as a bank employee. Proudly explaining his methods, he shrugged regretfully. But now that I've been caught, I'll return it to your account right away. Just wait a minute. As he got up to leave, I quickly grabbed his arm. Do you think just returning it ends this? What now? Are you going to demand compensation for such a small thing? That's petty. There was no harm done, just laugh it off. It's impossible. This is a criminal act, and I'm reporting it to the police. Hey, stop. This time, David grabbed my arm and yanked it roughly, causing me to stumble and fall over the counter. As he raised his fist to strike, I braced for the impact. But nearby employees restrained him, and he couldn't move. Let go. She's playing the victim, trying to take everything from me. The real victim is me. Someone had called the police, and within minutes, sirens were audible. Police officers entered and dragged David away. Sandra. Tell them to stop. I have a future with Hannah. His face was a mess of tears and snot, but I said nothing. At least he showed no sign of reflection, so he deserved no future. After the commotion, David was prosecuted for embezzlement. He'd be under police custody for a few years, a relief since I wouldn't have to see his face. He'd balked at paying me $50,000 in compensation. But it turned out he'd be charged with a much higher amount. First, he had to repay the stolen money plus compensate for a minor injury I sustained during the bank scuffle, totaling $80,000. The bank also demanded $200,000 for reputation-related losses. After his arrest, many deals fell through, causing great trouble for the bank. David would lead a difficult life even after his release. I hoped he would realize his mistakes by then. Separately, I claimed $30,000 in damages from Hannah, his mistress, who paid immediately. It was painfully clear she wanted to end this chapter quickly. David and she would likely never meet again. After the bank incident, Amy profusely apologized to me. She said it was her fault for the money being stolen, but I wasn't mad at her at all. She even suggested changing banks, but I immediately refused. I trust you, Amy, so let's continue as we are. Besides, I wouldn't have time to worry about money anymore. I needed to focus on my writing series. It had been a tumultuous 3 years, but the experience had undoubtedly helped me grow. I vowed to live for myself and began typing passionately on the keyboard. It really suits you. That outfit seems like it was made just for you, Becca. While praising my sister Rebecca like that. Our parents adored only her, while ignoring me. They probably don't know about Rebecca's spoiled and unpleasant character nurtured by their favoritism. Seeing me, the most neglected member of the family, Rebecca would scoff. Computer club? So lame. Only nerds join that stuff. That club's just been for boring people for 2 years. Unaware of my feelings, Rebecca hurled these cruel words at me. After graduating high school, I moved out to live alone because my parents told me to leave. Little did I know, a year later, my parents would come crying to me. My name is Amber. When I was 2 years old, my grandparents passed away. And it's been just my parents, my older sister Rebecca by 1 year, and me. My parents have been running a newspaper business. That has been in our family since my great-grandfather's time. Ever since I was little, I've been compared to Rebecca daily. It seemed like I was just an inconvenience to my parents. They had no interest in me and only doted on Rebecca. I realized this around kindergarten, when I always had to wear Rebecca's hand-me-downs. Whether it was clothes, shoes, or even toys and utensils, everything I had was once used by her. Did they ever buy anything just for me? Rebecca always received whatever she wanted from our parents. It really suits you. That outfit seems like it was made just for you, Becca. Rebecca, fluttering her cute white frilled dress, looked happily at herself in the mirror. I'm so happy with this. I love you, Mom. She hugged our mom with a full smile. But you can't wear this to school. Let's choose something simpler and more comfortable for school. Rebecca always had plenty of clothes, some for home and others specifically for school. I just watched from the side. I never craved clothes, but it always made me envious. That Rebecca alone received new things, exactly what she wanted from our parents. Here, Amber, take this. But this doesn't really suit you, does it? My parents call Rebecca by the nickname Becca. But they just refer to me by my name without any affectionate term. Saying this, they handed me the worn-out clothes Rebecca had dirtied. Pants covered in mud and a shirt with a stretched neckline. Of course, there were cute skirts that Rebecca had worn too. However, they never suited me at all. Indeed, Rebecca and I look nothing alike. Rebecca has big, bright eyes like our mother, silky long hair, and fair skin. Anyone would say she looks cute. On the other hand, I resemble our father, with double-lidded eyes, short curly hair, and a skin tone that tans easily. No matter what clothes made for Rebecca I wore, they would never suit me. I once said I wanted to grow my hair long too. Amber, even if you grow your hair out, you won't look like Becca. Don't you agree, honey? Yes, that's right. Just as your mom says. It's not that I wanted to become Rebecca. I just admired the princesses with long hair I saw on TV. My mom, imposing her opinions without listening to mine. Rebecca goes to the beauty salon monthly, but I've never been taken there. My hair would just get curlier and look less cute the longer it got. So my mom would cut it as soon as it grew a bit. Dad loves Rebecca too, though not as much as Mom does. However, he seems unable to stand up to Mother, always agreeing with her. Mom often said, "It would have been better if Amber had been a boy." My parents always wanted a son. This was due to pressure from my grandparents, who believed one isn't complete without a son. My mom faced considerable pressure, and they were greatly disappointed to find out I was a girl. Perhaps that's why they think I'm not cute. Once I started elementary school, I continued to be compared to Rebecca at school. As always, I was only given Rebecca's hand-me-downs to wear. Is that girl over there really your older sister, Amber? Pointing at Rebecca, who was wearing twin tails and pink pants, a friend asked. Yeah. We don't look alike, do we? Often told we didn't look alike. I had developed a habit of saying it first before anyone else could. After others would say we don't look alike, they would often add, "Your sister is prettier. She would look good in anything." Every time I was compared to Rebecca, it felt like my heart was wearing down. By the second grade of elementary school, everyone knew Rebecca was my sister, but my friends stopped comparing us. I had also made some close friends, and I looked forward to spending time with them at school more than being at home. Plus, I loved studying. Discovering things I didn't know was thrilling. I had started to always score perfectly on tests, and I looked forward to showing my parents. That day too, I wanted to be praised by my parents, so I showed them my test answers. Surprisingly, they praised me. "Wow, isn't that great? Oh, at least you can study. Keep it up." Never usually praised, I was happy that my parents showed some interest in me. I wasn't working incredibly hard at my studies, I just enjoyed what I was doing. And it showed in my test results. I wasn't good at sports, but Rebecca excelled in them. Conversely, Rebecca wasn't good at studying, which was the one area I surpassed her in. Despite my better grades, my parents still cared more about Rebecca. Seeing my better performance seemed to upset her. And when Rebecca complained to our mother, she said gently, "It's okay if you're not good at studies. You can live without that. A woman just needs to be charming. We'll take care of everything else, so Rebecca, do what you like." This is how our parents spoiled Rebecca, and as a result, her grades didn't improve but rather declined. As the years passed, Rebecca's character worsened. "I'm so cute, why is my sister so ugly? I wish I had a cuter sister." I was surprised when Rebecca thought of herself as cute. Whenever someone praised her as cute, "I'm not cute at all," she would say. I didn't know how to respond when she said such things to me. I was at a loss for words, and when I didn't respond, "Don't think you've beaten me just because you can study," she said, and left for the living room where our parents were. I never thought of such a thing. As you can see, though we were sisters, we were never close. By the 4th grade, my parents had me helping with the newspaper business. On weekends, I'd wake up at 4 a.m. to help with inserting ads and sorting deliveries. I was the only one forced to help. I never saw Rebecca helping. On weekends, she slept as much as she wanted. She disliked getting her hands dirty from touching the newspapers. I was the only one made to help, but I didn't mind it much. Waking up early seemed to suit my body well, and I enjoyed the slow mornings. I also liked reading newspapers and looked forward to being the first to read them. Most of our employees seemed to know that my parents only doted on Rebecca. At the workplace, my parents would always boast about how cute Rebecca was, or how they couldn't bear to see her in any pain. Maybe that's why everyone was so kind to me and talked to me a lot, which made me very happy. Even if it was out of sympathy, it felt like people acknowledged my existence. And some people would even give me pocket money secretly, unbeknownst to my parents. "You're still in elementary school but always doing so well. Use this to buy something you like." With those words, I was handed a few dollars. Though it was just a small amount, to me at that time, it was worth so much more. I was only praised by my parents when I did well on tests. Knowing that someone was watching over me made me incredibly happy. I saved the pocket money without spending it, hiding it behind books on my bookshelf so nobody would find it. Time passed, and we became junior high students. I was pondering which club to join. Rebecca, skilled only in sports, joined the volleyball team and became a star player. Naturally, our parents were overjoyed, providing transportation to games, and even managing her diet and massage care, acting like personal managers. I, not good at sports, ultimately decided to join the computer club. I became engrossed in tasks like typing and programming, skills that improved the more I practiced. Computer club? So lame. Only nerds join that, right? Computer club? That club's just been for boring people for 2 years. Rebecca didn't think there was any value in me joining the computer club since it wasn't a competitive environment. Ignoring her comments, I started on my homework. Over time, I stopped talking to Rebecca, who constantly looked down on others. In the computer club, I made close friends and enjoyed my daily activities. I became particularly close with a senior named Fred, who had recently moved to the neighborhood. We talked so much that I forgot he was my senior, and naturally, we started walking to and from school together. Rebecca did not like this. Why is someone as plain as you walking home with a guy? Apparently, Rebecca had come home early one day and seen me walking with Fred. Fred, tall and sociable, had quickly become popular after transferring to our school. Rebecca was displeased that I was getting attention or that I was close with a boy. Normally, I would ignore her, but that day I responded. Fred is in the computer club, you know? The one you called a lame group full of nerds. And what I do and who I befriend is none of your business, Rebecca. Stop picking on me all the time. Instead of always speaking ill of others, why don't you study? If you can't talk about anything else, then leave, you're disturbing my studies. I intended only to retort a little, but my pent-up feelings overflowed. Just because you're plain doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty. With no comeback, Rebecca stormed out of the room after slamming the door. Lacking vocabulary, she couldn't respond further. My parents were unaware of Rebecca's poor character. In front of others, she always acted demure and played the part of a gentle girl. One day in the second year of junior high, as Fred and I were walking home, he said, "Your family seems pretty tough, huh?" "Really?" "We always start out early because of the newspaper business. Isn't your situation tougher? Your mom works as a hairstylist and she's a single mom, right?" We were close enough to talk about our families. By our third year, Fred had retired from club activities to prepare for high school exams. And we walked home together when our schedules allowed. It's not that. Your mom told my mom that she always dotes on Rebecca. Probably, my mom had spoken in their usual way to Fred's mom, who lived nearby. Because she had heard about me from Fred. Amber is good at studying and computers, she's really great. She reportedly said to my mom. But my mom responded. Amber is neither beautiful like Rebecca nor does she have any talents. Fred's mom got worried about me hearing that. I see. I'm used to it, so it doesn't bother me much. I replied cheerily, and Fred, as if hurt himself, chuckled and changed the subject. You should get your hair cut by my mom sometime. She wants to meet you. Surprised by his sudden suggestion, I was honestly pleased. I had been cutting my own hair, but from then on, I started having it cut by Fred's mom, deepening our relationship. Meanwhile, Rebecca, now in her third year, was finally trying to study. But her grades didn't improve much, unsurprisingly given her usual lack of effort. However, our parents seemed unworried. You don't need to try so hard at studying. We'll send you to a private school, just do what you like. Despite not having much money, they were set on sending her to a school that allows payment for admission. I vowed never to be such indulgent parents as I watched this unfold. True to my mom's word, Rebecca attended a casual private high school and started dorm life, leaving home. With Rebecca gone, my life didn't change much except for the absence of her sarcasm. My parents still showed little interest in me, and I continued to focus on my studies, club activities, and helping with the newspaper business. Later, I joined the local high school where Fred was already attending, and joined the computer club there, resuming our walks to and from school. As we discussed school and home life, we grew closer and started dating, with hardly any conversation at home. The time spent with friends at school and with Fred became my only joy. Towards the end of my sophomore year in high school, Rebecca came home with important news one day when I was called into the living room. "I actually have someone I want to marry. It's Scott." Rebecca showed a photo of a man 5 years older than her, who was working at an IT company. He looked like a refreshing and decent young man, and Rebecca seemed quite smitten. "He's rich and kind, and he tells me I'm cute every day. He said he wants to marry me after I graduate, and I can just stay home and not work." She planned to live together after graduation. Rebecca intended to become a housewife as Scott suggested, without pursuing college or a job. I listened with a detached feeling to her seemingly too good to be true plan. However, our parents were thrilled at the news. "That's great. Now we'll have a son-in-law in the family. And he's even coming to live with us. Since we're getting a son-in-law, you're not needed anymore. Once you graduate high school, please leave this house." I couldn't understand why getting a son-in-law meant I had to leave. But I had no intention of staying with my parents forever. I felt somewhat excluded from their happy world, but by then, I didn't really care. "Got it." I responded plainly and returned to my room to start looking for a part-time job right away. I needed to work to support myself after graduation. Having never worked before, I discussed this with Fred. His mother's hair salon needed help, so I was hired to assist with tasks I could do without a beautician's license. Though I thought I was fine with leaving my parents' house, talking to Fred about it suddenly made me cry. It was hard being treated coldly by my parents. I had wanted to be cared for too. Overwhelmed by sadness and frustration, Fred hugged me gently. For me, Fred had become an irreplaceable part of my life. In my senior year of high school, I cleaned at Fred's mom's salon and took on other jobs I could do without a license, like working at a grocery store and a family restaurant. I didn't pursue further studies, dedicating my time to work instead. Thanks to the pocket money I had secretly received from the newspaper employees and my earnings from the part-time jobs, I managed to save enough to start living on my own. I graduated from high school and got a full-time job at a local company, moving away from home. On the day I left, I said goodbye to my parents. "Thank you for everything. I have no plans to return to this house." "Of course. You don't need to come back." My mom, who seemed pleased that I was leaving the house, kept smirking the entire time. She even muttered about needing to quickly clean up my room to prepare for Rebecca's arrival. Amidst this, my father finally spoke up. "Do it properly. And make sure not to bother anyone." His words could be taken as encouragement, but it seemed more like he meant not to bother them. I was just happy to finally say goodbye to this house and left with a feeling of relief. My uninterested parents never asked where I was employed or where I would be living. The old me might have been sad about their indifference, perhaps even crying over it. But now, I have people who care about me and need me. Just knowing that was enough. I headed to their place, which was just a few minutes' walk from my parents' house. I was going to live with Fred. Rewinding a bit to the fall of my senior year in high school, I had secured a job and was looking for a place to live. Around that time, I had finished my job hunting and was consulting with Fred about finding a house. After graduating, he was living alone while attending a beauty school. in the city where I had found a job. Although we couldn't meet often, we managed to go on dates about once every 2 months. And our relationship was going well. Why don't we just live together? It'll save money, and we can be together all the time. There are only benefits, right? When I struggled to find a suitable place, Fred made that suggestion. Really? I was surprised when Fred suddenly brought it up, but I was happy to hear his proposal, as I would need an adult's help to sign a rental agreement before finishing high school. And I had no reliable adults to turn to. I was worried about what to do. Then Fred continued in a softer voice. Plus, I plan to marry you someday. It's just happening a bit sooner than expected. He seemed embarrassed as his voice trailed off. Watching him, I felt a deep affection. Thus, we decided to move in together with the intention of eventually marrying. Fred's mom was, of course, thrilled. She even drove us to Fred's apartment. There will be a lot ahead, but work through it together with Fred. I think of you like my own daughter. You can talk to me about anything, anytime. I was so touched by her words that I looked up to avoid crying and replied, "Yeah, I'll do my best." After graduating high school, I started living with Fred and immersed myself in my job. My work involved using computers, specifically developing business improvement software for companies. It required specialized knowledge, which I learned on my own while facing daily challenges. Fred was attending vocational school and working part-time. We couldn't afford a lavish lifestyle, but having Fred, who cherished me, and coming home to share our daily experiences over dinner made for a simple, happy life. A year into my job, when I had gotten used to the work, I noticed multiple missed calls on my phone from my mom, over 20 of them. Due to my busy schedule, it wasn't unusual to miss calls during work. But this many was excessive. Curious but cautious, as I hadn't been in contact with my parents for over a year, I suspected it couldn't be good news. Preferring to avoid any involvement with my family, I intentionally ignored the calls. I decided not to answer if I noticed the phone ringing. The next day, however, I was woken up by the persistent ringing on a holiday morning. It was still 6 a.m. The caller ID showed it was my mom. Calling from this early in the morning could only mean trouble. I reached for my phone, intending to reject the call and block the number. But groggily, I accidentally answered. "Finally, you picked up my call. I've been calling so many times, you should at least call back." Hearing my mom's voice after more than a year brought back memories of the stifling life at home, giving me an unpleasant feeling. I should have hung up immediately, but I responded, "What do you want, calling me so early in the morning?" Already irritable from being woken up, and now even more so because it was my mom. I couldn't help but respond in a harsh tone. Fred, startled by my voice, woke up as well. But my mother continued as if my circumstances didn't matter. "We've lost our home. So, we're going to live with you, just be ready for that." What? That makes no sense. Just tell me your address. What was she talking about? I thought I was just confused because I was half asleep, but it didn't seem so. They hadn't contacted me in over a year. And now they wanted to live with me because they had lost their home? I didn't know and didn't care why they had lost their home, but what an audacious plan. I let out all the frustration I had been holding back. "After all this time ignoring me, now you say this? You always favored Rebecca over me, showed no interest in me. And you were the ones who kicked me out, weren't you? If you're in trouble, just ask Rebecca, your favorite daughter." My complaints poured out uncontrollably. My mom, taken aback by my reaction, tried to calm me down. Just calm down, Amber. This isn't the time to talk about that. After a brief silence, she began explaining the reason for her call. Rebecca and her fiancé, Scott, had followed their plan. She moved in with him after graduation and became a housewife. But she couldn't handle being a housewife at all. Rebecca, who had never done any household chores or laundry, was constantly failing. It was typical for her to burn the food, and it took her too long to cook. She didn't know how to use seasonings properly, so her dishes were unappetizing. And the kitchen was always a mess with dirty dishes scattered around. And oil splattered everywhere. She also didn't know how to use the washing machine properly and couldn't even iron a shirt. When Scott came home tired, he would find the house in disarray. And the table set with meals that were both unappealing and unpalatable. He was reaching the end of his rope with her incapacity to handle household chores. That's expected. She never did any chores, and you never asked her to. But Rebecca was really trying for Scott. Scott, who liked Rebecca's looks, hoped she would improve over time. He sent her to cooking classes and patiently observed her progress. Rebecca gradually got better at cooking and managing the household. Half a year after they moved in together, they got married. Also, Scott really thought about our family too. Scott, who worked at an IT company, had plans to expand the family's newspaper business after becoming independent. He had even inspected the family home and came up with specific proposals. Seeing this, my parents dreamt that the newspaper could grow much larger in the future. To make this dream a reality, and because they were uncertain about their own future, they transferred the ownership of the family home to Rebecca. When she started living with Scott, there was no need to rush changing the house's title. That was our mistake. Their dream was ultimately destroyed by Rebecca. Shockingly, Rebecca had an affair with a man who taught at the cooking school Scott had enrolled her in. Scott often had to travel for work, leaving the house empty. Although he tried to come home early on weekdays to share meals together, his frequent business trips meant he was often away. Feeling lonely, Rebecca succumbed to the advances of the instructor and began an affair. Rebecca has always hated not being the center of attention, hasn't she? Given Rebecca's penchant for attention, it's unsurprising she would do this. That's not all. She wasn't just unfaithful with one person. Encouraged by the fact that Scott hadn't discovered her affair with the instructor, Rebecca had affairs with several other men. Scott found out when he saw the credit card statements. Rebecca, who had improved in household tasks but was still hopeless with numbers, was not trusted with managing finances, so Scott had handled them. He discovered her infidelity from the records of her stays at inns with her lovers and shopping at high-end men's fashion stores while he was on business trips. She also treated herself to expensive cosmetics and bags, seemingly treating the credit card as a limitless spending tool. Unbeknownst to her, all these expenditures were tracked, including the times she let her lovers drive Scott's car, leaving clear travel records. Thanks to Rebecca's foolishness, evidence of her affairs was quickly compiled. One would think to be more cautious if engaging in affairs. I could only be astounded by Rebecca's actions. Confronted with evidence of her infidelity, Scott demanded a divorce. Of course, he also demanded compensation. And compensation for the expenses Rebecca had incurred for herself. There's no way Rebecca has that kind of money. Having never worked or saved, Rebecca refused to pay the compensation. She depended on men and vanished, becoming uncontactable. The only asset left was the family home, which had been transferred to her name. Unable to make payments, the property was seized and the newspaper business halted. Consequently, my parents were evicted and called me in desperation. Even after hearing everything, I felt no sympathy. "So you don't have a place to live, and now you turn to me? That's far too convenient. It doesn't mean we should live together just because you're in a tough spot." Angry and trembling, I was at a loss for words when Fred took the phone from me. "Please don't ever contact Amber anymore. I will make her happy." Fred had listened to the entire conversation and hung up abruptly. He then turned to me, saying I had done really well up to now, and gave me a comforting hug. I cried in Fred's arms for a while before calming down. It seemed I was only ever a convenience for my parents. Realizing this was sad, but I was truly fortunate to have Fred by my side. I blocked my parents' numbers and focused more intensely on my work. My only concern was for the employees who worked for my family. Unable to stay still, I contacted several of them. They all reassured me not to worry. Most of them could manage a living without their newspaper job. In fact, they were more concerned about me. "I'm living happily. Thank you all so much for caring about me and even giving me pocket money." They all responded with warm words. Scott had hired a detective to locate Rebecca. She had been hiding out, moving between the homes of acquaintances. Although the family home was seized, it wasn't worth much as it was neither new nor particularly valuable. Rebecca was pursued for the remaining compensation payments. She had never worked before but was now struggling to make ends meet through night work. Though reality proved harsher than expected. Unable to cover her debts through night work alone, she desperately sought daytime employment, eventually being hired as a cashier. Though she struggled even with simple calculations, and often received complaints from customers, Scott intended to ensure she paid every penny owed. As for my parents, after being kicked out, they moved between friends' homes while trying to locate Rebecca. They were also burdened with repaying the loans they had taken out for Rebecca's private education. With the newspaper business gone, their home lost, and their daughter missing, all they were left with were debts. Stressed, my mother frequently lashed out at my father, who eventually couldn't bear it and divorced her. The loans had been in her name, leaving her to struggle with repayments alone. This was all recounted to me by Fred's mother. This story had become quite the local scandal, and there was no one who hadn't heard about it. It was bad of Rebecca to always rely on her parents, who never encouraged her independence. From my perspective, they all reaped what they sowed. Years later, Fred and I got married. Fred achieved his dream of opening his own hair salon and was busy with its success. My dedication at work was recognized, and I grew to participate in major projects. I'm now on leave, expecting our first child with Fred. Although it's my first pregnancy and comes with its anxieties, I have a strong ally, my mother-in-law, who treats me like her real daughter and has been a tremendous support. I respect and rely on her like she's my own mom. With Fred and my mother-in-law by my side, I'm confident our child will be born healthy. I'm committed to ensuring my child doesn't have to endure what I did. I'm going to form a family that's always happy and smiling. My name is Kathy, and I am 32 years old. I've been married to a company employee for 3 years, but we don't have children yet. We live in an apartment together, and we only meet each other's parents during Easter and Christmas holidays. Since my husband's family lives far away, we can only visit them during those times. But it's always lively with many relatives gathering. My in-laws are very friendly people and treat me like their real daughter. When we have family gatherings, they always ask me to help out. And I enjoy working with them without feeling any ill will. However, my husband has a sister named Mandy, who is quite difficult. She doesn't help out at all. While preparing for the party with me, my mother-in-law would talk with a grimace. My own daughter is harder to talk to, so I end up asking you for help all the time. Even my mother-in-law feels uncomfortable openly talking to Mandy. Mandy graduated from a prestigious school and was accepted into a top university. Now, she is planning to study abroad. My father-in-law brags about her. But my mother-in-law is concerned about her personality. Mandy has always been excellent in everything since she was young. And she looks down on her brother, my husband. During a family gathering, someone complimented both siblings on attending university. It's amazing that both siblings here went to university. Mandy glared at the relative and responded unhappily. Don't compare my university with the third-rate one my brother graduated from. Graduating from such a university is no different than just finishing high school. The room went silent after Mandy's words. But my husband, trying to lighten the mood, started talking. I may have graduated from a third-rate university. But I'm living a happy life with a beautiful wife like Kathy, so I'm satisfied. Thanks to my husband's joking, everyone smiled again, but Mandy did not seem amused. Her anger turned towards me, the wife praised as beautiful. Kathy, which university did you graduate from? Knowing that I only graduated from high school, Mandy asked this question on purpose. I'm not ashamed of being a high school graduate, so I answered honestly. You know, I only graduated from high school. Mandy dramatically feigned surprise and exclaimed, I'm sorry. Since my brother always brags about you, I assumed you were a college graduate. There are still high school graduates around these days? She said this and left. But since there were other high school graduates among the relatives, the atmosphere became heavy again. My husband and mother-in-law had no choice but to apologize to everyone. After graduating from university, Mandy was set to go to graduate school and then study abroad. Before she left, we gathered at my in-laws' house to see her off. And she took the opportunity to make a snide remark as usual. I suppose a high school graduate like you wouldn't know. But studying abroad is much harder than just traveling. My husband was about to retort, but I stopped him and replied with a smile. Right, it's dangerous overseas, and the food is different too, so be careful. I meant to be kind, but Mandy suddenly got angry. Don't act like you know anything about studying abroad when you've never been. The relatives gathered were displeased again. But Mandy left for her studies abroad without any concern. Her father, burdened with the cost of her study abroad, laughed tiredly after she left. I hope she gets a good job after a year abroad and earns a lot of money. I can't even keep track of how much money I've spent on her. My husband laughed along with his father. She'll be back in the US in the fall to try out internships at various companies, right? She was bragging about applying to foreign companies. My mother-in-law also joined the conversation, worried about Mandy's job prospects. As for me, I felt relieved and unrelated, and after the relatives left, I cleaned up. It was more enjoyable to visit my in-laws without the high-achieving Mandy. I cooked with my mother-in-law and listened to stories about my husband's childhood from my father-in-law. The atmosphere was truly better without Mandy. It had been 6 months since Mandy went to study abroad, and I was just starting to forget about her. Next week, Mandy will be returning to the US and will start working as an intern. She will work at one company for a month, my dad told me. Just hearing about Mandy made me feel uncomfortable, so I responded to my husband. It has nothing to do with me, right? I don't mean to be harsh, but I really don't want to meet Mandy. My husband's expression suddenly turned serious. I don't want to see her either. Dad is in debt due to her, and I can't stand her constantly bragging about her education. It seemed like my husband was trying to consider my feelings when he spoke negatively about Mandy. Anyway, we had agreed not to visit his parents' home while Mandy was around. But unexpectedly, I would meet her sooner than I thought. The next day, when I arrived at work, the HR department reported that a student would be joining us for an internship. I initially thought we were hosting a foreign student studying in the US, but it turned out to be a student currently studying abroad. When I was handed the list of incoming interns, I froze upon seeing the name. It was Mandy. Our company is involved in recruiting foreign workers for American companies. This includes lawyers, interpreters, and sometimes executive managers. And we also introduce American nationals to companies overseas. Mandy was studying economics at university and graduate school, so she might be an expert in that field. Our company employs people who are fluent in foreign languages and knowledgeable about laws in the US and abroad. I wasn't initially concerned about the internship since it was arranged by HR. But knowing Mandy was coming made me uneasy. I didn't think she would join our company permanently. And I wondered why she would intern at a non-major corporation. I casually asked the HR staff about the internship. It's unusual for our company to have an internship, isn't it? The staff member replied with a troubled look. Yes, it is. It seems like the government wants to promote internships aggressively. And they pushed it on us. Given this, I thought it might just be a coincidence of names, with someone bragging about their education, since everything was already communicated to the other party. And it was just an internship, we decided to proceed with the acceptance. I was unsure whether to tell my husband that Mandy would be interning at our company, but I decided to keep quiet for now. There was a chance it was someone with the same name, and I could discuss it after confirming it was indeed Mandy. About a month later, on the day the intern was supposed to arrive, I came to the office early as usual and started cleaning inside. Our company has many foreign employees, and everyone is quite business-minded. No one comes before work hours to clean the office. I don't force anyone else to do so, so I usually wipe down desks and mop the floors myself. Then, a woman arrived and greeted me grumpily. Good morning. I am Mandy, and I will be under your care from today. Nice to meet you. She seemed nervous, maybe because it was her first day. Or perhaps she was disappointed it wasn't a major company. But she greeted me reluctantly. I greeted her back without thinking. Good morning. When Mandy and I looked at each other, we stared for a moment. But she started speaking condescendingly as usual. Kathy, what are you doing? Of course, a high school graduate like you would be a janitor, right? Your outfit really suits you. Her nervous expression quickly turned into a smirk, and she was back to her cheeky self. I was dressed in work clothes and wearing a white headscarf, looking like a typical cleaning lady. I resumed cleaning and spoke to her with a smile. You have your internship starting today, right? It might be confusing since it's all new to you, but good luck. Hearing this, Mandy laughed derisively. What are you, a janitor, acting all high and mighty for? Hurry up and finish cleaning, then get out. As other employees began to arrive, Mandy's expression turned nervous again. After finishing the cleaning, I went to the back room to change. Our company has a small morning assembly at the start of the workday. And I walked into the office where all the employees, including a very nervous Mandy, were lined up. As I entered, everyone greeted me. Seeing me, Mandy glared and said, "Don't let the janitor, who is an outsider, in here." This remark shocked all the employees, and they corrected her. "What are you saying to the president? That's rude, isn't it?" Mandy still didn't understand when they said I was the president. And she yelled at me again. "Get out of here, high school graduate janitor." The HR person next to her hurriedly tried to quiet her down. "I'm the president of this company. I was in work clothes earlier, so I probably looked like a real janitor to you, huh?" Still incredulous, Mandy turned to the HR person for confirmation. "I heard this company was a foreign-funded enterprise. Why would someone like her be the president?" At first surprised to learn Mandy was my sister-in-law, the HR staff let me explain. "Indeed, it's foreign-funded, but I'm the president of the US branch. I use my maiden name at work, so maybe you didn't realize? After graduating high school, I moved to Spain. In my early 20s, I started working with the founder of this company, helping introduce American people to Spanish companies. The business was successful, and when it was decided to expand to the US 5 years ago, I returned and took up the position of president of the US branch." Mandy seemed unconvinced even after my explanation. But after the morning meeting, I called her and the HR staff for a talk. Don't give her special treatment just because she's my sister-in-law. Regardless of whether she works here permanently, she needs to understand how tough working here can be. The HR staff responded with a smile, but Mandy was clearly unsettled. It seemed humiliating for her to be ordered around by me, whom she always looked down upon. She looked like she might cry, staring at the ground. I left the handling of Mandy's situation to the HR staff and didn't get involved. At the end of the day, I asked the HR staff about her behavior. "How was my sister-in-law today?" The staff grimaced. "She's high pride and difficult to work with, considering she can't do much. I've only seen her for one day, but I'd say she shouldn't be hired here." It seemed her language skills were lacking despite studying abroad. And the biggest issue was her lack of communication skills. With her attitude of not listening to others, she would struggle anywhere. That evening, I was planning to tell my husband that Mandy had come to intern at my company. However, he started talking first. "Did Mandy intern at your company?" Dad called, begging to let her stay on as an employee. While I was taken aback, my husband continued. "She's been interviewing at major companies, but keeps getting rejected at the documents screening stage. In your company, you have an advantage if you can speak Spanish, right?" My husband wasn't very aware of the specifics of my company, so I enlightened him. "Spanish is essential, but it seems Mandy isn't that proficient. Also, today she mistook me for a janitor and ridiculed me as a high school graduate in front of all the employees." I laughed. Hearing this, my husband was stunned, realizing that employment at my company would be difficult for her. After a week at my company observing the workflow, Mandy stopped coming the following week without any notice. The HR staff tried to contact her multiple times, but her phone seemed to be turned off. They asked me to contact her family, but I firmly refused. A person who skips work without notice doesn't qualify as a professional. Please inform the head office that her internship is terminated. I'll check on her well-being personally. When I called her home, my mother-in-law told me that Mandy was locked in her room. Being bossed around by others had been a humiliation she had never experienced. Yet, she wasn't ready to abandon her pride and arrogant attitude either. Back home, my husband, possibly asked by his father, pleaded with me. "Mandy has locked herself up at home. Can you do something?" Even if asked, I was at a loss. His father wanted me to introduce her to a different foreign-funded company where she could be employed. While her education might attract some companies, Mandy herself was intent on a major corporation, making it difficult. My husband understood this and said resignedly, "As much as Dad is eager, it's up to Mandy to decide." Can't help it. Mandy quit studying abroad and returned to her parents' house, becoming a full recluse, hiding even from her parents. When my husband and I were called to her parents' house, Mandy stayed locked up. And yet, her father asked me again to find her a job. Believing it best to confirm with her directly, I tried at her room door. "If it's not a major company, I can introduce you to companies likely to hire you." As expected, Mandy yelled back, "I won't rely on a high school graduate." Since talking to her only made her angry, I decided not to involve myself with Mandy anymore. My husband also stopped bringing up her situation, and we didn't even call out to her when visiting her parents' home. It was a waste, considering her education up to graduate school and further study abroad. Her parents were concerned about Mandy, but once they learned I was pregnant, they became preoccupied with the upcoming grandchild. I don't want my child to be an arrogant adult with no abilities. Seeing Mandy's current state makes me realize that academic credentials really don't matter as much. Our 5-year-old daughter underwent surgery but unfortunately passed away. As I grieved, my husband appeared indifferent. Neither he nor his parents attended our daughter's funeral. "Did you make the call?" "I've been calling, but it won't connect." Where could he possibly be? Throughout the funeral, I couldn't mourn our daughter as I was continuously trying to reach my husband. Just as we were about to move to the cemetery, I finally got through to him. "Where are you?" "We're at the cemetery now. If you don't hurry, you won't be able to say goodbye to Ashley." When I urged him to come quickly, he responded lazily and shockingly, "I'm not coming to the funeral. Right now, the dog is sick and we're at the vet. So, just handle the funeral there." "Oh, but don't think you're keeping all the condolence money." I was stunned by his words and stood there dazed after he hung up. "How did it go? Will he be able to come soon?" He said their family dog caught a cold, so they're all at the animal hospital. "Looks like he's not coming." What? My father was even more furious than I was that my husband's family wasn't coming. He couldn't forgive them and decided to take action. My name is Sherry Morgan. I am 28 years old and work as a web designer. I lived with my most precious daughter, Ashley, and my husband, Wayne. Ashley is currently 1 year old. She has grown into a very cute girl, but her birth was difficult. My water broke when I still wanted her to grow inside me a bit longer. And she was born weighing only 50 ounces. Immediately after birth, she was placed in an incubator without me even holding her, as her organs were still immature and she had to undergo multiple surgeries. Thankfully, she survived the surgeries. However, my joy was short-lived as I was told by the doctors that Ashley would need round-the-clock care even after being discharged. She would have to be fed through a tube, and it was uncertain when her illness might recur. I regretted not being able to keep her safe inside me longer and cried endlessly. I blamed myself every day, wondering why my child had to go through this. This physical and emotional toll was compounded by Wayne and his parents. Although Ashley wasn't in a state to receive visitors at birth, Wayne had informed his parents and my parents about the birth. While my parents decided to celebrate later and ended the call, his parents reacted differently. "She's born? We're coming to the hospital right now." Excited by the news, his parents rushed over without fully understanding Ashley's current condition. "Wayne. Where is Ashley?" Wayne guided his parents with a slightly awkward expression on his face. When they saw Ashley, his parents said, "What is this?" Seeing Ashley connected to many tubes and unable to be held, they blamed me. "Why didn't you give birth to a healthy grandchild for us?" That's right. Do you know how much we were looking forward to our grandchild? Unable to even get out of bed after a cesarean section, I was scolded by his parents. Pretending to be sick. Why don't you get up and explain? Why did you marry Wayne if you can't give birth to a healthy child? What are you going to do about this? When will this child be cured? After being severely reprimanded, I looked to Wayne for help. I need to use the restroom." Saying so, Wayne fled without helping me. After he left, I ended up apologizing to his parents while crying. "I'm very sorry." After that, my in-laws lectured me for about an hour. But Wayne did not return during that time. Finally, after the in-laws had left, Wayne slowly came back. I suddenly had a stomach ache and was in the toilet the whole time. What Wayne said was clearly a lie. His eyes were evasive. I asked him why he left when I was being so blamed. "Why did you leave when I was being blamed like that? If you had explained properly over the phone, this might not have happened." I tearfully expressed this to Wayne, hoping he would reflect on my plea and consider his future actions. I believed he would, but he let out a heavy sigh and said to me in an annoyed tone, "Mom and Dad didn't do anything wrong. And it's no surprise you got yelled at. Ultimately, it's your fault for not having a healthy child. Don't talk like it's somehow my responsibility too." With that, Wayne clicked his tongue and left. After that, he never visited the hospital again. Even after we were discharged, he continued to treat Ashley and me coldly, avoiding facing us. "Hey, I bought Ashley a cute outfit today. Doesn't it look nice?" No matter how much I tried to reach out, Wayne remained indifferent. Whenever I thought he was about to talk to us, he would avoid us. "I have a drinking party tomorrow and the day after, so I don't need dinner. Also, I'll start having breakfast at work from tomorrow." While I understand the desire to avoid the reality that our daughter isn't like other children, this attitude can't continue forever. I asked Wayne to at least cooperate a little in raising her. "Hey, Ashley is your child too, right? Please, just listen to me. Help out with raising her." I looked into Wayne's eyes for the first time in a while and shared my feelings. But he did not meet my expectations and coldly pushed me away. "If that's the case, maybe you should have given birth to a healthier child. Don't push your responsibilities onto me." With that, Wayne put even more distance between us. No matter what I said, he wouldn't listen, and no matter how much I pleaded, it was futile. I almost gave up on getting any help from Wayne in caring for Ashley. When I needed a break, I decided to ask my parents for help. "I have to go to the hospital today, so your father is coming over to take care of Ashley. Then I won't come home until late at night. In fact, I'll stay at a colleague's house. Wayne always made sure he wasn't around when his parents visited our home. He did this because he didn't want them to find out that he wasn't involved in parenting at all. On the days my father would come, he would kill time somewhere else and pretend to be busy. I just passed by Wayne at the station. He said he'd be working late into the night again. It seems so. Wayne is such a hard worker. He must be working so hard to provide for us since Sherry is doing her best with the childcare and housework. I wanted to tell the truth, but without solid evidence. It would just sound like I was complaining. Hearing that Wayne is working so hard makes me feel like I need to do my best in taking care of Ashley too. Seeing my father deceived by Wayne hurt me. Actually, Ashley has surgery next month. Could you or Mom come that day too? Sure, I understand. Is Wayne working that day? He's also working hard for Sherry and Ashley. I'll take a day off to be there for the surgery. Thank you. My father always prioritized me and Ashley. He is a musician who appears on TV and magazines. Not only is he talented in composing, but his good nature is also well recognized, allowing him to appear as a commentator on news programs and variety shows. Despite his busy schedule, he would take time off work to be with us whenever Wayne couldn't, postponing even important engagements. When Ashley turned 5, my mother-in-law, who had been estranged and hadn't been in touch since Ashley's birth, suddenly called. Frightened by her sudden contact, I didn't answer the phone. The ringing continued for a while and then went to voicemail. When I played the message later, it made me shudder. Hello? Is Ashley better now? You haven't shown your face to us since she was born, have you? And it's causing talk among the neighbors. They've never even seen their granddaughter, and they wonder if we're lying. So if Ashley is healthy, come show your face here. Hearing my mother-in-law's voice for the first time in a long while was as selfish as ever. She wanted to meet, but her reasons were just to appease the neighbors, which didn't make me want to go. However, as soon as Wayne returned home, he said without listening to my opinion, "We're going back to my parents' house this weekend." Wayne must have been told by his parents over the phone. We hadn't gone to his parents' house before, but he suddenly started saying we should. I wanted to refuse because of the harsh treatment I received right after giving birth. But it had been 5 years. Reluctantly, I thought I had no choice but to go. Then the day came when we were supposed to head to his parents' house. "Hey, help me get Ashley into the car." What? I don't know about that. Do it yourself. Even though Wayne had decided to go to his parents' house, he didn't help with the preparations, causing us to be much later than planned. We were supposed to leave at 11 o'clock, and now we're 40 minutes late. You're always so slow. If you had helped, we could have left much earlier. I was upset being spoken to like that and retorted. During the drive, Wayne was in a bad mood, and he continued to grumble all the way to his parents' house. "I shouldn't have married someone like you. If it were my child, by now he'd be in tutoring, swimming, and learning English, becoming an elite. You've ruined all those plans." I tried to ignore Wayne's words as much as possible and looked out the car window. It was tough even after we arrived at his parents' house. "Hurry up and get inside. What if the neighbors see this?" His parents must have thought Ashley was now healthy. When they saw her in a wheelchair, they immediately worried about the neighbors seeing and rushed us inside. "Wayne, you made sure the neighbors didn't see us from the parking lot to the house, right?" "Of course, I'm being cautious. Wayne and his parents talked as if Ashley were something to be ashamed of. Their conversation made me instinctively want to retort. "Excuse me, but..." I was about to retort when my mother-in-law interrupted me. "Sherry? How long are you planning to keep Ashley like this? She should be getting better by now, right? If you keep her in a wheelchair and take care of her like that, she won't get better if you coddle her." My mother-in-law clearly didn't understand Ashley's condition, just as she hadn't from the beginning. Even when I explained her symptoms, she wouldn't listen and would yell, assuming she would get better as she grew. My father-in-law also had no intention of understanding and spoke arbitrarily. "Are you causing trouble for Wayne? Get surgery done quickly and cure her. Otherwise, we can't even say we have a granddaughter at work." My father-in-law showed no intention of understanding and made unreasonable remarks. I also realized that even after 5 years since Ashley was born, they still hadn't accepted her as their grandchild. Had I known I would be subjected to such comments, I would have never come to their home. I wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. "Wayne, I'm taking Ashley back, so give me the car keys." "What? No way. Plus, it's a car I bought with my money. What makes you think it's yours? If you want to go home, take the train." Wayne said this and went back to the living room to snack and chat with his father. While waiting, I was barked at by the family dog, which thought I was an intruder. "Sherry, could you please not stress out Max? Also, if you keep letting him bark like that, the neighbors will know you're here." Scolded, I was pushed out to wait at the front door. A chilly breeze blew, and I draped my cardigan over Ashley. Then I spoke to her as if reassuring myself. "Ashley, I'm sorry. Just hang in there a little longer. Daddy will be here soon, and then we'll go home." 2 hours later, Wayne finally said he was ready to go. "We'll come again." "Yeah, next time just Wayne is fine. Let Ashley come after she's healed." Though I was implicitly told not to come again, I thought it was for the best. However, on the way home, Wayne said this. "We'll go again next month." "What? But didn't your mother say not to come?" "That's obviously a lie. If we really don't go, they'll say we lack sincerity and get angry. Make sure we go next month and the month after to keep them happy." Wayne interpreted his mother's words this way, but I couldn't understand it. "I don't think it's a lie. We weren't even allowed into the living room today. I really think we shouldn't go anymore." When I objected, Wayne sighed. "This is why my mom dislikes you. You should just do as I say." Thus, persuaded by Wayne, I ended up agreeing to go again next month. And when the day of our next visit to his parents' house came, Wayne began to complain. "I don't feel like going today." "You go by yourself." "What? If you're not going, shouldn't we all just not go? I'll tell your mother we're not coming today." "What? My mom isn't just sitting around, she's made time for us. Just go already." His selfish remarks left me dumbfounded. Complaining about Wayne here would only lead to him retaliating later. I wanted to avoid Ashley being scolded, so I decided to comply. Upon arriving at his parents' house, they indeed did not look pleased. "Why did you come? We told you not to come anymore. There's no point in you coming if Wayne isn't here." "I'm sorry. We were not even let inside and were scolded at the entrance before being sent away." It turned out to be a wasted trip, and when I told Wayne about it, he just laughed. "Of course, you weren't let inside, huh? My parents really don't like you guys, huh?" Wayne was just playing with me and Ashley. Overwhelmed by Wayne's demeaning game, I finally raised my voice. What do you mean by that? It takes over 30 minutes just to get Ashley ready to go out. Plus, we never know what kind of illness she might bring back when we go out. You might think this is just a game, but it's really troublesome for us. Stop making us go through these meaningless trips. For the first time, I raised my voice and vented my true feelings to Wayne. Wayne seemed surprised by my sudden assertiveness, but quickly returned to his usual demeanor and said, "Don't get so angry. After all, it's your fault for not letting my parents see Ashley, isn't it? Your parents come to see her often. It's your unfair attitude that's the problem." Wayne's response was off the mark, and he yelled that I should leave. I could no longer bear to stay with Wayne, and decided to go back to my parents' house. When I finally returned to my parents' house, they warmly welcomed me and Ashley. If you had waited at home, I would have come to pick you up in the car. It must have been hard coming all this way. Mom has prepared some coffee, so have a drink and relax. I'll take care of Ashley in the meantime. My father lovingly cared for Ashley, allowing me to rest. I heard you had an argument with Wayne? That must have been tough. Wayne probably didn't mean to lash out at you and Ashley. He was just tired from work and happened to take it out on you because you were there. Don't worry about it. My father didn't know the full story and tried to smooth things over. Thank you. I could only thank my father for his kindness. Then, without telling me, he called Wayne. I just called Wayne. He said he regrets what he said and told me to tell you that you can come back anytime. What? Wayne said that? I was surprised by the message from Wayne, as he had never apologized before. Just then, I received a message from Wayne on my cell phone. Oh, a message from Wayne? Maybe he's saying he misses having you and Ashley at home? My father teased me as I read the message. But my brief upliftment crashed as I read Wayne's true sentiments. The message stated that it was more comfortable without us, and that we should just stay at my parents' house permanently. What did Wayne say? I hesitated to tell my father the truth of the harsh message. He said maybe we should stay here a bit longer? Can we stay at my parents' house for another month or so? I just got back, so I want to sort out my room. I lied on the spot, trying not to worry my father, who happily agreed that we could stay as long as we needed. A week after staying at my parents' house, Ashley's condition suddenly worsened. While I was in the bath, my mother burst in, saying something was wrong with Ashley. 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 Calm down. Let's call the hospital first. In a panic, I called the hospital and an ambulance. While accompanying a frantic Ashley in the ambulance, I contacted Wayne. Hello? Ashley suddenly got worse, and she's having emergency surgery. Wayne responded with his usual lethargic voice. Oh. Surgery? Well. I wondered if he was going to complain again. Amidst my anxiety, my father arrived in his car. Sherry, how is it? Did you get through to Wayne? Just as I heard his voice, Wayne said to me, I'm coming now. Which hospital? It's the general hospital near my parents' house. I told him our location, and he hung up immediately. His sudden change in attitude surprised me, and I relayed this to my father. Wayne is coming now. That's good. It'll be reassuring for you to have Wayne there. Although my father said that, I couldn't genuinely feel happy. The reason for this unease would become apparent later, but for now, I was just confused. Father. I'm sorry, thank you for being by Sherry's side for me. I'll be here now, so it's all right? The first thing Wayne said when he saw us was to show concern for my father. In that moment, I sensed that flattering my father was more important to him than anything else concerning Ashley. Ah, thank you. Now that Wayne is here, I guess I'll head home. Call me if anything happens, I'll come right away. As my father said this and handed over to Wayne, he left. And Wayne immediately changed his attitude. Ah. I was relaxing at home. Don't make calls in front of your father. It forces me to come. What do you mean you have to come? It's only natural. She's your daughter? I was bothered by Wayne's way of speaking and retorted. It implied that if my father hadn't been there, he wouldn't have come at all. His indifference towards his own daughter was too much. I knew it wasn't the time for a quarrel between spouses during Ashley's surgery. But I couldn't hold back. Whatever the situation, you have to come immediately if something happens to Ashley. That's what you're supposed to do as a parent. After I firmly stated this, Wayne got angry at being lectured and started to grumble unhappily. Don't impose your common sense on me. You don't even know my situation. What situation could possibly be more important than Ashley? There's nothing. Surely, Wayne was just upset because he had been pulled away from playing mobile games at home. I was disgusted by his lack of parental responsibility. Wayne fell silent, and the atmosphere became tense just as the doctor appeared. Seeing the doctor's uncomfortable expression, I sensed everything. The doctor then spoke heavily. Is it Ashley? Ashley had died during the surgery. For a moment, I could only stare at the doctor, unable to even blink. Then I just broke down crying. I was still unable to grasp the reality of losing my daughter. And after informing my parents, Wayne also notified his parents. My parents came immediately, but his parents did not come at all. I had no time to ponder what to think about his parents not coming, as I quickly became busy with the arrangements for the funeral and other procedures. And as I started preparing for the funeral, I suddenly realized, where's Wayne? Initially, I thought he had just gone to the bathroom. But Wayne never reappeared, and the funeral proceeded. Where's Wayne? Both my father and mother started looking around for him, noticing that Wayne and his parents weren't there. Sherry, why don't you try calling Wayne? Prompted by my father, I called Wayne. But no matter how many times I dialed, the call wouldn't connect. The attendees also noticed the absence of Wayne and his parents, causing confusion. I kept calling Wayne throughout. Then, an announcement to move to the cemetery was made. Wayne, where are you and what are you doing? I continued calling Wayne while performing my duties as the chief mourner. My father also helped me call until we finally got through to Wayne. Where are you? We're at the cemetery now. It's your last chance to say goodbye to Ashley, hurry up. As time pressed on, I rapidly fired these words at Wayne. Then, with his usual lethargic voice, he responded. I can't, I'm not coming. Just handle it there. Oh, but make sure you don't take all the condolence money. Why aren't you coming? And your parents too. Even if they hate us, isn't it common courtesy to come? It's not the time for Ashley's funeral here. Wayne raised his voice in response to my words. Right now, Max is sick and we're at the vet. I even stepped outside the hospital just to take your call. I'm going back inside, so I'm hanging up. Wayne prioritized the cold of the dog at his parents' house over his daughter's funeral. He cut the call without waiting for my reply. I was stunned by his unbelievable words. What? I tried calling again, but by then, I was already blocked. I wondered if this was really more important than Ashley's funeral. There were surely other options, like entrusting the dog to someone else or using a pet hotel. Besides, all three, Wayne and his parents, went to the vet. Couldn't just one of them have come? Sherry. What did Wayne say? My father approached as I stood there stunned. Until now, I had been making excuses to save Wayne's face. But I couldn't think of doing so anymore. I relayed exactly what Wayne had said. Wayne doesn't intend to attend the funeral. He said it's more important to accompany the dog at his parents' house, which has a cold. As I spoke out loud to explain, I became increasingly sad and began to cry. Meanwhile, my father looked puzzled and frowned. What do you mean? Then, I explained that Wayne and his parents were currently at the vet. And despite not attending the funeral, they still wanted the condolence money. That's too much. Just because the dog has a cold doesn't mean everyone has to be there. My father comforted me by patting my back. While consoling me, he seemed to be pondering something. Of course, I understand being worried about the dog. But Wayne could have left it with his parents and come to Ashley. He should have explained the situation and come to be with Ashley. This isn't just about today's funeral. Actually, Wayne has been neglecting us for a long time. I also revealed how arrogantly he behaved at home, and how we were treated poorly at his parents' house, continually subjected to insults. My father was at a loss for words, having never imagined Wayne would do such things. So, from Wayne's perspective, this funeral might just be another trivial event. As I said this out loud, I felt even sadder and my tears wouldn't stop. My father didn't say anything, just stayed by my side. Then, a few minutes later, my mother came to call us as it was time to say goodbye to Ashley. Shall we go? Let's talk about Wayne later. My father said that, and I shifted my focus from Wayne to Ashley. After saying goodbye to Ashley, the long yet fleeting day passed. Back at my parents' house, I once again discussed everything from the beginning about Wayne and his parents. My mother was also surprised that Wayne had prioritized the dog over Ashley. I also mentioned that I had been unable to contact Wayne since then. They probably feel relieved that Ashley and I are gone. Thinking that makes me so frustrated. As I let out my feelings of anger from deep within, my parents silently nodded in agreement. I really understand how you feel, Sherry. Can you let your dad handle things about Wayne for a little bit? Yes. I had no idea what my father was planning. As I stood there confused by his words, he said, "It's okay. Leave the rest to me and take some time to rest." I decided to take my father's advice, take a break from work, and relax at home for a while. A few months later, my father, who is a musician, released a new song and an essay. My mother and I were checking the TV program where my father was going to appear. "Look, Dad is going to be on next." When asked about the reasons behind his new releases, my father explained. "Actually, my granddaughter passed away at the age of 5 due to an illness. Both I and my daughter were devastated. And then, the actions of my son-in-law were unbelievably thoughtless. I channeled all those feelings of sadness and anger into these works." As soon as my father finished speaking, there was an immediate response to his song and essay. Some analyzed the lyrics, others took excerpts of my father's statements to express their opinions, and many who were in similar situations expressed their sympathy. It became big news. Many supported my father and me, criticizing those who could act so inconsiderately. Most people watching the TV didn't know Wayne, although they couldn't pinpoint the person. Those who knew Wayne immediately understood who it was about. Because when Wayne had first married me, he bragged to everyone that my father was the well-known musician, Brian Jackson, who appeared on TV and magazines. I married the daughter of that Brian Jackson. Cool, right? Well, if you really want, I could get you his autograph or something. Wayne had boasted about this to his friends and colleagues. His respectful behavior towards my father had always been about getting autographs to show off to people around him. If he ever upset my father and we became estranged, getting autographs and boasting would become difficult. Therefore, in front of my father, he had always acted like a devoted husband. However, now, his actions of spreading the word around had backfired. I started receiving multiple messages from friends. Since Wayne had also been deceiving my friends, his true nature was revealed. And they were angry as if it were their own issue. Amid these messages and calls, I also received a call from Wayne. I was busy replying to friends and had ignored it, but the phone kept ringing. He had blocked my calls up until now. But when things went south, he unblocked me and reached out. The display showed Wayne's name, and I reluctantly answered. Hey. Withdraw what your father said immediately. I'm getting lots of calls here, and so are my mom and dad, and it's causing trouble. Do something about it. It seemed Wayne was also receiving a lot of contacts. Not only Wayne, but his parents had also been bragging about my father to others. Come on? You'll listen to what you say, right? I was reflecting, so tell him to withdraw his statement. Even through the phone, I could tell Wayne was panicking, probably looking pale. Knowing this, I told them that I absolutely do not intend to ask my father to retract his statement. No way. This is your last chance to see the consequences of how much Ashley and I have suffered. Maybe it's time you face some public backlash and reflect? I said this, but Wayne still insisted. Please. Okay, fine. You can keep all the condolence money. You're probably just upset about the money, right? Do whatever you want with it. It's not about the money. I reflexively raised my voice in anger. It's not the money, it's about not forgiving your actions towards Ashley and me all this time. Your parents included. I finished speaking in a low tone and hung up the phone. My mother, who had witnessed the entire ordeal, immediately knew the caller was Wayne, and after I hung up, she gently rubbed my back. Thanks to my father's actions, maybe Wayne's family would reflect a little. That's what I thought, but they took an unbelievable action. One night, as my father returned home, the doorbell rang almost immediately. My mother checked the intercom and suddenly screamed. What's wrong? My father took over to check, and there stood Wayne and his in-laws. My father cautiously pressed the intercom button while on guard. Yes? Ah, Mr. Jackson, I'm terribly sorry for the trouble our son has caused you. While speaking with a slight smirk, my father-in-law spoke. My father assessed that they had not come to attack and continued the conversation. Ah. And what is your purpose here? Well, we wanted to retract the statement made on TV today. That's impossible. Please leave. My father firmly rejected the in-laws. Their attitude changed instantly. We went out of our way to come down here and even humbled ourselves. And this is the attitude we get? Don't you have any compassion? That's right. We didn't even need to come here. And ultimately, it's your daughter's fault. If she had just given birth to a healthy child, none of this would have happened. Excuse me, but do you understand what you have done? Huh? We just wanted a healthy grandchild. All we did was discipline a daughter-in-law who couldn't provide that. What's wrong with that? That's right. It's because you didn't discipline your own daughter properly. So we had to do it instead. The root cause of all this is in your family. No matter what they heard, they wouldn't listen and insisted that everything was our fault. My father remained calm, but he had reached his limit with their disrespectful behavior. Trying to win the public over is useless. In the end, it will be revealed that you were the wrongdoers. You're blaming us for not having a healthy child. If I sit here quietly, you just say whatever you want. Regardless of the child's condition, our mission is to love and nurture. What? That's just empty talk. Perhaps due to the noise made by my in-laws. A neighbor called the police, and officers soon arrived. What, the police? This is an overreaction. We were just. My father-in-law panicked upon seeing the police, probably realizing deep down that they were in the wrong. They scattered like spiders but were quickly apprehended and taken away. Even during the police questioning, they were still concerned about public perception. The next day, we learned that reporters had been in front of our house, and the commotion caused by Wayne and his parents was covered in a weekly magazine. The headline questioned whether the heartless words in my father's essay were about this family, and it quickly became a hot topic. People who identified the individuals involved flooded Wayne's and his father's employer with calls questioning why they were employed. Due to the high volume of calls, Wayne and his father were placed under house arrest. The three of them, slandered by strangers, gradually became afraid to leave their homes and eventually resigned voluntarily to live quietly somewhere else. One day, Wayne mailed a divorce petition to my house. Along with it, he included a letter. All rights to our house will be transferred to you. Wayne and I, along with Ashley, had lived in that house. He left all rights to the house and other assets to me, and they seemed to have fled somewhere. Seeing the letter, my father said, "That's good, isn't it? At least the divorce went through without any trouble." Yes, I nodded to my father's words and promptly filed the divorce papers. Years have passed since the divorce. I have now lost my beloved daughter Ashley, divorced Wayne, sold the house, and lost everything. I have no regrets about divorcing Wayne or selling the house, rather, I felt relieved. But losing Ashley has left a gaping hole in my heart. Even so, Ashley wouldn't want to see her mother like this. I'm looking forward, return to work, and am gradually getting back to normal life. Ashley, Mommy is going to do her best again today. I speak to her at the family altar every day, drawing strength from Ashley. Even if I meet a wonderful partner and have children in the future, I will never forget Ashley. When I am blessed with a new life, I plan to tell that child about Ashley. For Ashley, I aim to make each day wonderful.